Hi there. So, today I'm going to be reading out the latest edition of the Ken's FinTech newsletter, Kaching, by our writer Ronak Kumar Gunjan. Ronak has written some of our best reports this year, and if you're a regular listener of Daybreak, you may have heard him on our Friday special episode where he told us about digital fraud and how it's evolving. Now, last week he wrote a fascinating edition about UPI apps. So, without further ado, here goes. Remember that time in 2022 when India's top digital payment companies, PhonePe, Paytm, and BharatPe, were in a no holds barred turf war? Looking back, it seemed like there was news almost every other day about some tiff between the three market leaders. In fact, former managing director of BharatPe, Ashneer Grover, has spoken on record about street fights between companies' employees over QR codes. A little more than 2 years later, there is only calm. QR code scuffles are over. Nobody is beating each other up. Both the peer to merchant and peer to peer payment space have settled down into a tripartite peace. PhonePe, Google Pay, and Paytm, in order of market share, are the clear leaders. Despite the recent regulatory troubles, Paytm's volume of UPI transactions in November 2024 was more than 7 times that of Navi, the company fourth in line in terms of market share. And Paytm is not even close to the top two, PhonePe and Google Pay, which to me raise some interesting questions. And now I'm going to ask them to you. How many UPI apps do you have on your phone? And do you have a favorite one? Me, I just have two UPI apps, but only one of them is ever really used. No amount of cashbacks or fancy user experiences have made me want to switch to something else. And I'm not the only one behaving like this. Last week, non bank Bajaj Finance said that it was tempering its ambitions in the payment space after having invested over 3 years of effort and more than $100 million in its payment app, Bajaj Pay. An app that is, to quote Bajaj Finance's managing director Rajiv Jain, virtually similar to Google Pay and PhonePe. So, is it brand loyalty that is preventing users from churning out of old platforms into new ones? A former Paytm executive told me recently, and I'm quoting, there is zero brand loyalty for UPI payment apps. End quote. Well, then, what is happening? Welcome to Daybreak, a business podcast from the Ken. I'm your host Nigdha Sharma, and I don't chase the news cycle. Instead, every day of the week, my colleague Rahil Philippos and I will come to you with one business story that is worth understanding and worth your time. Today is Monday, the 30th of December. From what I've gathered during my conversations with executives in the sector, it is more about what isn't happening. Picture this. It is the pre-internet banking era. You're experiencing in real time all the cliches about bank branches being boring, slow, and inefficient. And a not insignificant amount of your time is spent standing in queues fantasizing about changing banks. But you very rarely do. Why? Because your bank is simply good enough, even after accounting for all its faults. And none of its competitors are so much better that shifting to them is a no brainer. So you swallow the temporary frustrations and carry on. This is what brand marketers call brand inertia. And it is why people are not switching between UPI apps. In fact, inertia, not just among customers but the larger UPI space, also showed up in Jain's explanation of why Bajaj Finance was pulling back on its payments ambitions. Here is what he said, and I'm quoting him. After 3 years of work, and if you use Bajaj Pay, you would find that the functionalities are virtually similar to a Google Pay and PhonePe. It is a product of huge inertia. And we are a public company. We have to publish results every quarter. We have invested virtually $100 million in building on Bajaj Pay over the last 3 years. It made sense that clearly we focus on viability of the payments business. End quote. Just to be clear, brand inertia is very different from brand loyalty. Say you're at a restaurant, you ask for Fanta, an orange flavored fizzy drink. The waiter says they only serve Mirinda, another orange flavored soda. At this point, you leave the restaurant in search of a place that serves Fanta. Then that would be brand loyalty. But how many of us would do that? Brand inertia, on the other hand, develops because there is no obviously better alternative. We already make innumerable choices every day, and the last thing we want to do is spend more energy evaluating options for very little gain. And thus, the current holding pattern in UPI market share. Stay tuned for more. Perhaps companies and platforms wanting to shake up the UPI space could take a cue from what is happening right under their noses with caller IDs. Truecaller is by far the most used caller ID app in India. But I recently came across an X or Twitter thread and had a conversation with an acquaintance that made me aware of a recent trend. Apparently, some people are now deleting Truecaller from their phones because of privacy concerns and instead using their payment apps to check for information on unknown numbers. Yes, you heard that right. One of the ex users that I spoke with said, and I'm quoting them, payments apps have several advantages. One, they already have a critical user data and are trusted with it. Second, the names that come as a search result are the ones that are there on the user's Aadhaar card. So there is no fraud or duplication happening. End quote. Of course, payments apps cannot match Truecaller's repository of phone numbers, especially its ability to flag spam and scam calls. But what they do offer seems to be good enough for users concerned about Truecaller. So, why doesn't brand inertia come into play here? Because unlike with UPI payments, people switching over from Truecaller have been given a strong enough push. Privacy concerns to these users are a good enough reason to change habits, which is the lesson payment apps looking to rattle the cage should take away. There are two potential UPI challengers who are beginning to show some promise. First, there is Sachin Bansal's Navi, which has moved swiftly up the ranks and is presently the fourth largest UPI player in terms of volume of transactions. Second, there is Flipkart backed Super Money, which has made significant progress in just 6 months after its launch and already occupies the seventh spot. Navi's rise is thanks to aggressive promotional offers such as cashbacks that sometimes go as high as 10 rupees per transaction. Of course, how sustainable such tactics are is open to question. Supermoney, on the other hand, is banking on facilitating credit products on UPI and attracting a younger audience. The value attached to a mature brand like Flipkart also does not hurt its prospects. Both are still miles away from seriously challenging the top three, but at least they are trying to give users some reasons to switch.
Daybreak is produced from the newsroom of the Ken, India's first subscriber-focused business news platform. What you're listening to is just a small sample of our subscriber-only offerings. A full subscription unlocks daily long-form feature stories, newsletters, and podcast extras. To subscribe, head to theken.com and click on the red subscribe button on top of the Ken website. Today's episode was hosted by Snigdha Sharma and edited by Rajiv CN.